Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Today's story isn't about fairy tales. It's about a girl, a decision, and a love that arrived when she least believed in it. Let's begin. Evening in Aurora moved slowly, like a brushstroke across an unfinished canvas. The late sunlight leaned over gray rooftops, slipping through dusty window panes of old hillside apartments. It was late autumn. The wind no longer sharp, but still strong enough to carry the scent of damp wood and fallen leaves under quiet footstep. In a third-floor unit of a worn-out building, Eva Monroe sat by the window, holding a cup of tea gone cold, her eyes following the soft light tracing its way across the opposite wall. She was 20. She had once dreamed of being a painter, but now, painting felt like a luxury she could no longer afford. Her mother, Clara, a former high school art teacher, lay quietly in the back room, where pill bottles shared space with overdue medical bills. Late-stage cancer didn't offer much time, and money was something Eva couldn't seem to find enough of. That night, beneath the low hum of the old heater and the fading scent of peppermint tea, Eva opened her laptop and typed into the search bar, "Discreet virginity auction site." She wasn't searching for hope. She was searching for a way to keep her mother a little longer, even if it meant giving up the last untouched part of herself to a world she didn't understand. Eva typed each word as if placing the final strokes on a painting, not one meant to be admired, but one meant to save what mattered most. The website asked for a profile photo. She chose a black and white image, taken from the shoulder, light falling gently over her collarbone and a loose strand of hair. Not seductive, just honest. The bio allowed 500 characters, but she wrote it like a whisper into the dark. "I'm a girl with color in her hands. My mother used to teach art. Now she's dying. I've never been in love, never touched anyone, because I believe the first time should be something beautiful. But maybe the most beautiful thing now is getting to stay beside someone you love for one more day." She uploaded the profile at 2:12 a.m. At first, just a few names passed by. By noon, the bids began to rise. 10,000 USD, 50, 0 USD, 120, 0 USD. Some sent notes, cash, no names. Others sent photos of watches, cars, a lakeside mansion. Eva didn't reply. She just watched, then closed the screen. The final message came at 3:47 a.m. the next day. No photo, no signature. Just one line, 1 million if she's untouched. Eva sat still, staring at the glow of the screen. For the first time, she saw the world place a price on something she had guarded all her life. And then, no tears, no hesitation, she clicked accept. The man who chose her didn't ask questions. No phone calls, no photos. Just a brief message from the website's administrator. Buyer confirmed. Time, Saturday 6 p.m. Location, Ashridge Cabin, Colorado. Gate code to follow separately. Eva didn't know what to expect. A cold face? An older man with too much money? Or someone who would treat her like an object wrapped in silence? But the man she met was nothing like she imagined. His name was Adrien Wells, 46. Tall, slender, with ash-brown hair brushing his neck and eyes as deep as forest shadows. A novelist once celebrated for stories soaked in solitude. After the mysterious death of his wife 3 years prior, Adrien disappeared from all public life. He now lived alone in a cabin tucked deep in the Colorado woods. No signal, no reporters, only firelight and the scent of old paper. When Eva arrived, the door was already open. There was no eager stare, no transactional greeting. Adrien simply said, "I made dinner, if you're hungry." Throughout the meal, he never mentioned why she was there. When she finally asked, "You're not going to?" He shook his head. "I don't want your body. I want to know what you see when you look at the world." And when Eva looked up for the first time, she saw a gaze that didn't see her as a body to be taken, but as a story waiting to be written. After dinner, Adrien said nothing. He simply stood, nodded slightly, and walked toward the hallway at the back of the house. Eva was about to return to the living room, but he paused, glanced over his shoulder. "Come with me for a bit." The room he led her into smelled faintly of damp wood and dried paint. Under a soft amber light, a single blank canvas stood between two wooden chairs. An open box of paints waited on the table beside it. "Let's paint one together," Adrien said. "I'll start, you follow." Without another word, Eva sat down. He painted first, a bare tree branch reaching toward a fading sky. She added a soft streak of orange winding through the limbs, like the last light of autumn wrapping itself around what was left. Silence settled between them until Adrien spoke, his voice low. "You live with your mother, don't you?" She nodded, brush still moving. "She has cancer, late stage. I don't think there's much time left." He didn't respond right away, just added a few strokes, mist curling gently around the scene they were building. "You paint like you're trying to hold on to something that's slipping away." Eva looked up. His eyes weren't pressing. They were simply waiting. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't being watched, she was being heard. When the painting was done, Eva set her brush down. "It's been a long time since I painted without fear," she whispered. Adrien nodded. "It's been a long time since I let someone into this room." The next morning, a gentle layer of snow rested on the cabin's roof. Eva left without a word, no farewell, no lingering glance. But on the passenger seat, someone had left a folded note, its ink slightly smudged. "The money has been transferred. If you ever wish to paint again, that room remains open." On the drive back, Eva didn't cry, but her throat tightened, as if something unspoken had lodged there. Not grief, but the quiet weight of receiving what she never expected. Kindness without condition and a gaze without judgment. A week later, her mother, thanks to that payment, was admitted to a better facility. That afternoon, in a sterile room steeped in the scent of antiseptics, Clara slipped into sleep after a dose of morphine. Eva sat by her bedside, holding her unfinished sketch, unable to add another line. That night, she reopened the old message. No hesitation. By early morning, Eva returned to the cabin. No warning. Adrien opened the door as if he had known. He asked nothing, simply stepped aside and said, "Back room, good light, it's yours if you want it." No explanations, no terms. Eva painted again, for the first time, not for money, not for survival, but because something inside her whispered that this place held something worth touching. Adrien didn't hover, but he was always near, far enough to give her space, close enough to make sure she never felt alone. Eva didn't move into the cabin completely. She stayed for a few days, then returned to the hospital. Early mornings, late nights. No one asked anything of her. No one counted the hours. But somehow, in the midst of sleepless nights by her mother's bedside, the cabin stopped feeling foreign, like a quiet place that held a space for her, steady and still, while the rest of her world crumbled. Adrien never asked questions. Each time Eva came back, she found a warm cup of tea waiting on the kitchen table, a few slices of toasted bread, and an old art book open to a page about Vermeer's use of light. Once, she caught herself smiling, not out of joy, but from the strange comfort of being noticed without being invaded. The painting room was a small corner facing the woods, its wide window soaking in the early light. Eva set up the easel again, wiped away dried paint from the palette, placed the old brushes Adrien had given her into a glass jar. When her fingers touched the paper, she didn't try to create something beautiful. She just listened and let the brush speak the things her voice could not. Adrien often sat on the porch, reading, his eyes fixed somewhere beyond the trees, like he was listening to a story only he could hear. Sometimes they shared dinner, not because they needed company, but because being near each other felt quieter than being alone. One evening, when she returned later than usual, the door was still unlocked, and on the wooden table in the studio sat a small jar of wild purple flowers. No note, no explanation. But Eva knew. He had waited, and for the first time, in days filled with worry and distance, she didn't feel like she was losing everything. She felt, quietly, unexpectedly, held. It happened on a night the power went out. The forest beyond turned pitch black, the only glow coming from the soft crackle of the fireplace. Eva and Adrien sat at the kitchen table, finishing the last of the soup and 2 slices of cold bread. Outside, the wind twisted through the pines like someone whispering in a language made of time. "Have you ever been afraid," Eva asked quietly, "that the light might go out and never come back?" Adrien didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was slow, as though every word was a wound. "We used to live in a house near Mirror Lake. That winter, we lost our daughter. My wife, she couldn't bear it. A month later, she left. For good." Eva didn't reply. She only stared into her steaming cup of tea. "After that, I couldn't write a single word. I came here. I didn't want to be seen because I didn't know if there was anything left to see." A moment later, she rose and slipped into the art room. When she returned, she placed a sketch on the table. Unfinished lines, gentle strokes, a man standing at the edge of a fog-covered forest, his head slightly bowed. But behind him, a soft shaft of light filtered through the trees, like something waiting, quietly, to return. She placed it in front of him and whispered, "Not every shadow is an ending. Some are just the backdrop where light finds its way back in." And that night, they didn't speak to fix anything. They simply sat in the stillness, together, inside a shared absence. The call came on a gray afternoon when the wind began to sweep through the pines behind the cabin. Eva was mixing paint, her fingers still stained with oil, when the phone rang. She answered, and in just a few seconds it felt like the world stopped breathing. "You should come right away, Ms. Monroe. Mrs. Clara may not make it through the night." Eva didn't cry. She simply nodded, put the brush down, and reached for her coat. Adrien stood at the door. He didn't need to ask anything. He just said softly, "I'll come with you." They arrived at the hospital just as evening settled in. The sterile smell of antiseptic and cold fluorescent light filled the hallway. Inside the room, Clara lay still, thinner, smaller, as if she were slowly fading from reality. Eva stepped to her mother's side and held her fragile hand. "Mom, I'm back." Clara opened her eyes, smiling faintly. Adrien stood behind them, unsure whether he should step closer, but Clara signaled him with her eyes. He approached the bed, bowing his head slightly. Adrien," he said, his voice soft and sincere. She nodded. "I know," she whispered. "I saw you in her paintings." A long pause. Then she turned toward Eva, her gaze slow and gentle, like the last light of the day. She doesn't say much, but she loves deeply, more than she knows how to say. Eva burst into tears for the first time in weeks, clutching her mother's hand. "Please don't go. I'm not ready. Please." Clara didn't respond right away. She just calmly, gently took Adrien's hand and placed both of their hands into Eva's, a gesture that needed no words, yet said everything. "Take care of her for me," she whispered. "She's more fragile than she looks, but stronger than she thinks." Eva choked up. Adrien held her hand, without hesitation, not to replace anything, but to carry on. Clara closed her eyes again. Her lips still held a smile, not because there was no sorrow, but because there was peace. The room fell silent. Only the sound of the heart monitor remained, until it stopped. Eva rested her forehead on her mother's hand, not crying out loud, but letting her tears soak into the pillow. Adrien stood behind her, one hand gently resting on her shoulder, just enough to let her know that in this darkest moment of her life, she was no longer alone. After the funeral, Eva returned to the cabin. Not to run away, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because when her mother left, she had placed Ava's hand in Adrien's, and Ava understood. This place wasn't just somewhere to stay, it was a place to belong. Adrien was in the kitchen, pouring tea. He looked up when he saw her, but didn't speak right away. She sat by the fireplace, still clutching her mother's old scarf. After a moment, he set a cup of tea down in front of her. His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. "If you'd like, you can stay. Not because of your mother, not out of obligation, just because sometimes we don't need a reason to stay." Eva looked up. Her eyes were still red, but calmer now. "Yes," she said, I'll stay. There was no embrace, no tears, only a quiet moment between two people who had once been strangers, now learning to accept each other's presence like it was always meant to be there. That day, they cleaned the studio. Eva hung a sketch of her mother on the wall. Beneath the frame, she wrote, "First light." Because maybe the first light doesn't come from the sun, but from someone gentle enough to make you want to remain. One late afternoon, sunlight streamed through the studio window, stretching long across the wooden desk. Eva opened her laptop to submit a sketch for an art competition she had forgotten she entered. In her inbox, among spam and old notifications, one email made her sit up straight. "Congratulations, you have been accepted to the Fall Visual Arts Residency, Paris, France. Full scholarship, private studio, 3 months of creation." Her heart skipped a beat. It was a dream she had once set aside for reality. Paris, the city her mother once promised they would visit on a sunny day. That evening, she told Adrien over dinner, no hesitation. "I got invited to Paris, 3 months, a scholarship." He looked up, unsurprised. "Will you go?" "I want to, but I'm scared to leave you behind." He smiled, his eyes not sad, only still. "Don't stay because of me. I don't need you here to feel loved. I just need to know you're living what's true in your heart." Eva bit her lip, almost cried, but instead of tears came a trembling, grateful smile. "I'll come back," she whispered. Adrien nodded. "I'll be here, waiting for your light to return." 3 months passed, like a long, quiet breath. Paris had been everything she hoped, and nothing like she expected. But even in its golden light, her thoughts had drifted here. She stepped out, carrying a small suitcase and the camera slung over her shoulder, the one Adrien gave her before she left, engraved with a small line, "So you won't forget how you see the world." The cabin was just the same, still, simple, as if no one had ever left. Adrien stood on the porch, hands in his coat pockets, his eyes unable to hide what he'd been holding in all autumn. They didn't run, didn't need words. Eva walked toward him and he opened his arms, pulling her into an embrace, gentle, just enough. "I'm home," she whispered into his chest. "I know," he answered, his voice catching softly. No questions about Paris, no questions about feelings. Everything was already written in their eyes. And in that quiet embrace, no promises were spoken. Only one truth remained. She was no longer a stranger, and this place was home. 5 years passed like a painting made of soft light and the smallest sounds. The cabin was no longer just a place to live, it was a place to belong. Wild purple flowers bloomed every spring along the porch. Inside the warm kitchen, the laughter of a child echoed, blending with the scent of baked cookies and the scratch of colored pencils on paper. A little girl sat at the table, tousled brown hair falling into her eyes, holding a crayon and mumbling a story from her imagination. Eva sat beside her, quietly watching, her fingers still stained with paint. Behind them, Adrien watered the plants, his hair now streaked with silver. When their eyes met, both smiled. Like everything they had once lost had gently led them to this moment. "She has your gaze," Eva whispered. "And your heart," he replied. Nothing more was said. There was no need, because love now wasn't something to hold on to. It was something they lived with, quietly, gently, like dry paint on canvas, never fading, only settling in forever. The cabin still stood among the pine trees, simple, quiet. But now, it wasn't just a home, it was their world. A place that hadn't begun with love, but had become something far greater. A family born from two people who once believed they had nothing left and ended up finding everything. If this story touched something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Noah's Stories for more quiet, unexpected moments of love and hope. And tell us, have you ever found love where you least expected it? We'd love to hear your story in the comments below.